Hello, everyone. We're going to wait a little bit for people to join the sessions.
Hello, I'm here.
Hello, everyone. Let's get started. Where to start? I'm very, very happy to welcome Yves Hanoulle. So I was wondering how to start, how to introduce you, Yves. You may know Yves from the different books he wrote, especially maybe Who's Agile. And I think you wrote one about Who's Agile in Africa. You know probably Yves from the coaches retreat he is still organizing. Um, Yves is very connected from the floor. He collects a lot of information. He met a lot of people, as you can see on the background, right, from the picture. Today is here to tell us what he learned from the floor, from the trenches. Yves, we are very, very pleased to welcome you today. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Jerome. So I'm here. If you don't see me and all these others, this is tips from the trenches, tips that I gathered from 89 people. So they're not even all here. I was still waiting for 5 pictures when I was creating the slides. But these are tips, and of course, I don't have 89 tips in this hour. I don't get enough time from this conference to just bring all the tips, which is normal, of course, but I'll bring them. And so, of course, I'm just a little small here. Where is my mouse? Okay, so this is probably a little bit better so that you can see me. There's a lot more people there that will bring these tips. And important to know is that actually I will. These are their tips, but these are my stories. And later on, at the end, I will share this link again. You will be able to have a cheaper version of this book if you're interested and to want to learn much more of these tips. But it's important to know they're their tips, but I didn't change them, but I did tell them in my stories, because I cannot tell the stories like the people who wrote them. And the very first tip that I want to start with is the tip from Jerry, who passed away unfortunately some time ago. But the last conversation I had with Jerry, he actually shared this tip, and I really loved it. He said, "Well, if you have a lovely book, you have lots of tips in there. But my tip for everybody who's reading this book, and I liked it so much I made it a forward, is that." Try to start with just one tip. Don't. I know there's lots of great tips, and every time I read it, like, yeah, I want to do all of these, but that's exactly the opposite as was Jerry was advising us. He says, let's pick one, let's try it, let's experiment a little bit with it, and then see where you're going. So avoid to have too much going on at the same time, and that's his tip. Now, if you want to start with one tip, maybe it's good to start with this tip from Karen. I personally I love the book. I have it here with me. It's probably yeah, due to all of this. Yeah, so you can see it like this. Better Allies. The book is up there, no, there. Yeah, the Better Allies book. It's talking about, yeah, how we as humans can be better allies for all these other people. Because what Karen is saying is that we all have privilege one way or another, and it's good to be in check with our privilege and to understand where is our privilege coming from. And she has a full list with with 50 privileges, and I didn't have the time nor the space to talk about it, but let's talk about a few of these. If you're white, are you white? Are you male? Are you straight? Are you cisgender? Do you have a similar age of your coworkers? Are you fully able? That means you don't have any disabilities. Do you have a college degree? Did you attend a university? Is English your first language? Now, I have to admit that on a lot of these questions, I'm already saying yes. And what Karen is saying is, from the moment that you say yes to a lot of these questions, know that you have um, that you have um, a way to that you have some privilege. So this is really the important thing that she wants to say, is that, and know that this gives you this an advantage, and that there's others that don't have that advantage. And she's asking you, and this is what this book is about: how could you behave differently to help these other people? Give them a platform, talk about them, give them the opportunity that you get automatically. Help them with some of these. It doesn't mean that your life isn't can be hard, and it doesn't mean that you don't have other problems. It could be that I don't have some of these privileges, because, for example, English is not my first language. Yeah, but I'm still white, I'm still male. Yeah, so that still means I have a lot of other privileges, and it's good to know about these, and to know and how to help other people. So that's, for me, is a very important tip that we should do in an agile project, anything. And this is for any kind of way of working, of course. The next tip is coming from Henrik Nieberg, and Henrik, when he originally sent out a tip, he sent out just one word. He said observe, and I was like, don't we need much more text? What do you mean? But the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, and it's like, yeah, observe. That means so many different things. So observe the people around you. Be very curious, like a child can be curious to his sister. Observe and learn from it, and learn from, and that's the same thing we can do inside companies. Try to observe without having an idea, or without having making negative or thoughts about it. Let's just observe and recognize the facts, and see the things around us that are existing. And that is, I think that's a really wonderful tip to have and to work with teams. The next tip is coming from Kanacha, and it was really wonderful to read this, because she's talking, and at first I wasn't sure if I understood it completely, because she's talking about the Montagne Street Bridge, and that's a bridge that has been hit multiple times. It's actually too low, and you can see on the slide, you can see some pictures what they try to do to warn people about it. The bridge has become even part of memes, because so many people are hitting that. And there is actually a website that counts the number of days it's been going on since the last time that street bridge had been hit. So when I created the slides, it was at 103, and I was like, whoa, okay, that's good. But then I thought, okay, it's COVID situation, so probably not many people are driving things there. And indeed, this happened 2 days ago. The counter was at 2. Kanacha let me know. Oh, the someone hit the bridge again. Now, what's this tip about? What's this tip about? Now, the tip is that sometimes the system is that hard, and we try to work around the system, and we want, and so we create memes, we create ways to warn it. But sometimes the system is really wrong and should be changed, because that's what she's saying, is that, yeah, it might be nice to put warning signs. It might be nice, but let's face it. Sometimes the system really has a problem, and sometimes it would be a lot better if something would be changing at system level. And so that's what she's actually talking about. Try to make sure that you change your system, because this is not going to work. This is not working. The next tip that I have is around how to ask, and this is a tip from Tse. He said, and we do this these days. We work a lot with people from different communities, from different places around the world. And what Tse noticed is that when people come to us, they ask us things, but they don't understand our culture. And really, the way they ask, it's completely, it doesn't make any sense. And it could, you probably, we all have had this kind of situation where there is a command and control manager just not asking, but telling you something to do, and it yeah, it doesn't help to get you energy to want to get going. But Tse says that this is actually going on much worse with when we talk about different cultures. And what Tse is saying is that, okay, please make sure that when you work with people, try to first understand them, try to understand their culture before you go into to everything, and before you yeah you ask things, and try to make sure that you understand what's a good way of asking. So not just asking anyway, anyhow, but let's try to make sure that you understand. And I think Michelle's slide tip fits right with that. And she talks about becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. Um, she says that it's a myth that Scrum Master, Agile coaches, product owners, we feel comfortable in everything with us. No, sometimes we have to talk to people, to ask managers or other people to ask uncomfortable questions. And it's a myth that it's always nice, that we all feel good when we ask these kind of things. No, some of these things actually make us uncomfortable, and um, that is really important to know. So for us, that's good as a message to hear from time, like, okay, it's normal. All of us, we might feel uncomfortable when we're talking, when we working in teams. So it might be really good to understand that. And once you understand that, we can start become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it reminds me a lot of the first time that I did some fight. This is actually a picture of me walking on fire. And I wanted to add a little story behind it, because what I've noticed is that I was making fun of my mother who was doing some firewalking with, and I realized at some point, like, I'm making fun of something. I totally have no idea what it is. I totally don't know what it is. Um, and it actually, what she did made me feel uncomfortable. So what I said is, okay, I will. I didn't tell her, but I went to one of these events that I knew that were taking place, and said, let's go there. And it is exactly that. When I was in this situation where you see that woman standing behind me, that's really an uncomfortable place. It's getting really hot. You cannot really stand there. But then you start, at some point you say, okay, I'm going to start going, and then you go 1, 2, 3, and then you just go onto the fire. And I can assure you, it is uncomfortable. But at the same time, there is some comfort in, okay, keep going, because there's one thing you shouldn't do when you're in the middle of the fire, and then stop walking and say, okay, because that will, you will get burned by that. So you have to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, and keep stepping until you're at the end, and then stamp your feet to make sure that there's nothing staying on your feet. And that's the kind of thing for me that is there. It's good to realize this is uncomfortable. This is not my day-to-day situation. I'm doing this, but at the same time, okay, I'm okay with that, and I'm going to do that. And I can tell you, I got a lot of energy of doing that, and I understood a lot better why my mother was doing these kind of things. The next tip is coming from Michael, and Michael and me, we go back a long time. I think the first time I worked with Michael was 2005, something like that. And he knows that one of the things I talk a lot about is don't just beg for permission, just ask for forgiveness later on. And then I received a tip from him: ask for permission. And at first I was like, whoa, oh, wait a minute, Michael, what are you saying? But what I understood there is that when I talk about don't beg for permission, this is really about, we know what we can do in our company, and we know what is a good thing to do. And so at that point, we can say, okay, I don't need to beg for permission there. But when Michael is saying ask for permission, he's talking much more about when you talk to people, when you want to coach people, you cannot just jump in and say, okay, I have a good idea to coach you. And this is no, you first need to ask, okay, are you okay with some feedback? Are you interested in having some feedback? Are you okay if I join you in this meeting, or if I do stuff like that? And at that point, it's really important to ask for permission, because if you start coaching people who are not interested in being coached, at that point, it won't work. It actually might backfire. So it's actually a lot better to ask for permission and to say, are you ready for that feedback and stuff like that. And that reminds me again about the tip that I got from Anke. Anke wrote, "Love is key," and I really like um, what she was talking, because she gave a story about what happened to her in the beginning of COVID. She's a scrum master and she's working in the beginning of COVID, and she was looking like, how could I help? And she was completely lost at some point. Well, completely, I'm probably exaggerating. She might not like me here tell me that. But she was looking like, what should I do? And she was focusing so much more on the processes and how to help her team. And at some point, she realized this is not what I supposed to be doing. And so she started, first of all, to give herself the permission, like, okay, it's this is not so much about these processes, but this is much more about making sure that my team can act and work the way it is. Because she realized that she was still mad at the whole COVID situation, and that was not going to change. So once she realized that, she started, what I would say, even love herself and give herself permission to, okay, to talk and really care about the people in her team. And so it was a lot less about processes and tools. It was a lot more about, okay, how are you? Are you okay in this situation? How can I help you? And actually showing love for the team. And that actually helped her make her much more productive and make her team much more productive. So she called the whole way of working love is key, which I really liked. The next tip is from Woody. Woody said, "Turn up the good," and he meant it. I think in when he's saying is that when you see things happening inside your teams, make sure that you show people what are the good things. And I want to give you an example of that. I it in when was it, beginning of 2019? I went to speak at an Agile conference in India, Agile India, together with my daughter. And after the presentations in the evening, there was what we call, can't come up with the right name, but we were in a fishbowl. That's the word I was looking for. We were in a fishbowl where all the speakers are invited, and you can see there is an empty chair. So there is an empty chair for someone from the audience who can join in the conversation. And so Shane started to ask some questions, questions that were gathered from the audience during the whole conference, and he's asking the speakers to speak up. And my daughter, she looked at the first question, and the first question was about, okay, how can I become better? What should I do? And she was like, well, I'm here. I'm 11 years old. I have never had any English in school, but I'm here talking in English, and I dare to be on stage to speak in front of you. So let that be a sign. Let that be an example for you to try some. And I was like, I think that's the moment that picture was taken, because I was like, whoa, okay, what am I still doing here? This is so good. This is what I really like, what should be said at that moment. And a little after that, I left the stage because I felt like, okay, she's doing everything all right. I don't even need to be there to support her, because this is the good thing, what I was hoping that people can say, that I would even say. So I wanted to have her that shining, and that's what for me means turn up the good. When people do something good, when something good happens, give it a light and make sure that people see it. I know, give a complete different way when she was talking about learning. And she said, learning, well, I love learning. We all love learning, and learning can be fun, but we shouldn't forget that in a lot of learning, there is also a lot of pain. And that's why I took this picture. I know a lot of people that know me know that this is a picture that was taken a few days after the 1st of August 1991. And this is a picture from the house of my parents that I burned down. And I learned a lot of that. It's really interesting of what happened afterwards and everything I learned. But I have to admit as well that especially in the beginning, it was very painful. And this is what I know is talking about, is that yes, learning is good, and we should not forget as agile coaches that when people learn, that there is also a part that they have to unlearn. There is a part that actually is very painful about learning. When we learn about ourselves, it's not always nice. We learn things that we don't like, or we learn things that we don't like about our team or our company. And so, although there is a lot of fun in learning and we should never stop learning, we should also recognize to the people around us that, hey, learning can be very painful. And that is important to recognize that. Brenda gave a very interesting way when she recognized that learning can be painful, and learning is that when she left her job as an agile coach, she actually started to work again with a team, and she realized very quickly that, okay, I'm learning here, I'm working here, but all the things I've learned before as an agile coach are in a way not really not important, but less important as what I'm doing, because we shouldn't forget that when we work in a team, the focus should be on a delivery. And you can, and this is why I took the picture of when my daughter was born, because for me it's like, okay, you can do a lot of other things, nice cards, and you can all of these things, but the focus of that day is the delivery. Everything else is not important. The focus is that there is a healthy baby that is born there, and that the mother stays safe. So these things are important. We should focus on the delivery. And I think this is, Brenda brought a very important thing that for me as an agile coach was important to sometimes think about. Okay, we need to think about what we're delivering. We need to think about that end result. Tobias brought up something really important when he said, small changes. Look at how you can make things a little bit more adapted in our world, also for introverts, because somehow agile seems to give the impression that that the whole world is looking for extroverts. A lot of the things that we're doing in an agile world is helping extroverts, bringing them together and talking, but introverts still make up, depending on who you look to, 30 to 50% of our teams. And so we need to think about, and there's some tips here about how can we give time for introverts. So, for example, one of the things I like to do is when I'm in a facilitation of a retro, is making sure that people first write things on post-its, just giving them time to think, all of them, and then bringing one ID per time per person up. That actually is a lot better for introverts and still is acceptable for extroverts. If you let people start talk and bring up all their IDs, the extroverts will fill the room and the introverts will just go away in a way and not speak up. Same thing might be in all the meetings. Try to make sure that everybody says something in the first 5 minutes, even if it's just their name. You will have introverts speak up a lot more. Another completely in a different way is the tips from Molut, and I really like that she wants us to stress that we're working in a much more asynchronous world. If we're working in a remote world, we should focus a lot more about asynchronously communication. And a lot of the things that we do in an agile world is focusing on synchronous communication. The daily, we're all standing there together. The retro, we're all doing this together. The review, we all want to do, have everybody in the room. But what Murat is saying is, why don't we look much more on how can we do things much more in an asynchronous way? For example, why can't we just record a video about the demo and then send it off to people? Then people can look at it at their own different ways. And I think the agile world can learn a lot from the open source community, for example, where there's a lot more asynchronously going on. Next tip is coming from Ravi, and Ravi talks about the contradictions and the context. We should never forget that in a lot of the things that we're doing, there are contradictions. Like just in this picture, when my daughter is going to the sea for the very first time, I don't know if it's in the very first time, but that this picture was taken. But when a child goes to the sea for the very first time, it's like, oh, there's a lot of anxiety. We want to go there. And at the same time, the first time you hit that water, it feels cold, and it's like, why do we want it? Do I want that? Do I don't want that? And this is the kind of things that we need to recognize also in Agile. We Agile, our way of working, we're focusing on long term and short term at the same time. That's contradiction. That is hard. And in some contexts, you want to first focus much more on long term, and other contexts, you want to focus much more on long term or short term. So that's it's a little bit depending on the context. If you would go to the sea in the summer, or if you would go to the sea in the winter, that's a completely different context, and you might not want to go into the sea. So that's a different kind of situation, and we should think about it. Yuta brought a tip about doing it, and she said, and in a sense, I see sometimes a lot of agile coaches, and this is not a finger pointing, but I know some of us, we have never actually done the work, and so it's sometimes hard to recognize, are people actually doing it, or is this more cargo cult agile that we're doing? And we have to be very careful. And this, it's a little bit like in this picture. Joppe looks very nice, and it's like, okay, he's playing the guitar, but actually, if you know where the picture is taking, he's just in a shop, um, trying out the guitar and just looking cool and having cool sounds. Where actually, this is a picture where he's actually really doing it. And sometimes, as agile coaches, we have to know the difference, and we have to realize, is this a team that is faking it and is doing cargo cult for whatever reason? No, let's see if we can go in and try to understand if they're really doing it, because there is not much fun. You can do this and try out sounds a little bit like that, but that's not the same thing. If you go here, once you can do it, it's a lot more fun, but it's also demands a lot more focus, and it's actually a lot harder to get there. And so that sometimes needs, yeah, we need to do real work before we can enjoy some of that. And that brings me to the tip from Ron. Ron says, if you look at the manifesto for him, Ron is one of these people who wrote it, originally said, for me, working software over almost everything. And I'm in an agile conference, so we can still talk about working software, but for me, you could even apply it to a lot more things. It's actually the result that you give it to your customer. That's actually what really matters. And it's not that the documentation is not important. In some contexts, like healthcare, like even regulated environments like banking. And so there is a lot of things that you need to do. But in the end, if you don't deliver the thing that your customer is going to use, all the rest doesn't matter either. So we have to first make sure that we have working software before anything else. And that brings me to the tip from Stacy. And that is something that it might be really important when we talk about agile transformations. I see a lot of companies asking for, we want all of our teams to work on Kanban, all our teams to work on Scrum or Safe or less or whatever. And it feels a lot like we want to have one size. And what Stacy's actually saying is that one size is one size doesn't fit all. Actually, one size doesn't fit anyone. Most cases, it's actually the worst of both things. It's actually much better if we would adopt it. And for example, if I would use the same video that I used before, you would not see my son who was in that picture. And that's a nice example of, for him, he was, for whatever strange reason, it was possible for him to finish his book reading on the on the street, on a safe place anyway, but still he was reading where I probably don't think many people would read, but for him it worked. And it was strange for us as a parent to see, but at the same time it's like, okay, this is what's working for him. And that brings me to the tip from Jenny and Olaf, who says that we should stop protecting our our teams. And I wanted to say children because I have my daughter here, but what we sometimes do as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches is we want to overprotect our teams. And that has the disadvantages when we overprotect them, that they are not able to learn from themselves. So we should actually make sure that we're not always overprotecting. And we're not talking about dangerous situations. There are moments, of course, when my daughter wants to learn how to drive a bicycle, that I should be careful about it. But once she knows it at a certain level, I have to let go and let her drive. Even if at some points I might not always feel comfortable with it, because that's how she learns to drive. This is still in a street that's mostly empty, that is very safe. So once she starts driving that, we just look at ways where she can drive in a safe way, but we're not overprotecting and being there all the time. She can drive basically on her own on that road, and that also makes her learn a lot of things. And that's the same thing with our teams. It brings me also to what Dana calls the fact that we need to have, and sorry that the letters are not fully there, a team agreement with the teams. It's actually really good when you work with a team, just like with this large family. This is the family of my father. He had 16 brothers and sisters, so they were with 17. And yeah, if you don't have agreements when people will be home, when they will be eating, who's doing the dishes and stuff like that, it will become very difficult to manage such a large family. And that's the same thing with a team. Most teams are smaller than this, but if you don't have agreements on when will we start having the stand-up, what means on time, and things like that, it makes it a lot harder. What does it mean to have quality? What do we call quality software? And we have to have some agreements there. And it's actually helping a lot once we have these kind of things. And once you have it, then we come to what Sander calls continuously uncovering better ways. Because the Agile Manifesto, this is for me the first sentence is really what this is really about. We want to keep improving. We want to keep becoming better at whatever we're doing. And so it doesn't matter where you are. It's really about, can we improve ourselves all the time? That is what it's really about. And that means that things happen in their own time. That's what Corinna wants to say. And this is an example when another Agile coach, Philippe Launay from Bordeaux, took out one of my kids, Joppe, to go climbing into the trees. When he started there, he helped his son, but at the same time as he helped his son, he explained to my son what he was doing. And there were people behind them that didn't like it because it took them too long. But that was just at the beginning of the climbing. But because he explained it, actually Joppe was able to do it much better himself later on. And before they were halfway, they were way ahead of all the other people that were still doing it for their children, because Philippe taught Joppe and his son how to do that. And so with the three of us, very quickly they were able to do that. And that's because Philippe took the time in the beginning that was needed to do that in a quality and a safe way, how to do that. And very quickly they can move on in their own way. Brings me to the team, the tip from Jimmy. Jimmy talks about visualization. Jimmy wrote a very great book about visualization. That I can't come up with the right name. A very small little book about visualization, and I really think it's the best book that came out a few years ago. Really, a lot of tips about visualization, and this is a nice example that I created a long time ago with one of the first teams I've ever worked with, where we just visualized all the components that we had in our project and the way we had to be built. So the lines means this component that's on the top is needs to be built before the other components in building. And as you can see, it's a rather complex system, and we needed to do this. And we built it on the wall because it changed so much, and I've learned so much by doing it. We started doing it in Visio, and it was way too complex. And yes, I see the example 69's visualization examples. That's the one I was thinking about. Thank you, Benoit. And that's exactly an example of this becoming better to community. Jimmy created this. I created this book with these tips from the community. This is a rather old picture where you can see a lot of community members. Geert de Kang is there. Dave Nicolette is there. You see Laurent Bossavit, Bernard van der Beek, and you see a lot of other people. Jeff Kums is somewhere there. So you see a lot of people that were at the Agile community at the start in Belgium, and some from Europe, or actually from the US. Even Dave is from the US. So we all became good because we were standing on the shoulders of each other, and we learned from each other. And that is what Alison is talking about. We should really try to become better and look at the community, what we're doing, try to learn from it. And I know it's very hard for some people, once you have children, once you or maybe if you have multiple jobs or whatever. So it's not always easy, but try to find a way how you can interact and learn from the community. When I received this tip from Kartik, I had to think really hard, because question your team's intimacy. It's really about when you learn a team. Sometimes you see that a team it looks like it's working, but yeah, and especially I think in the whole COVID situation, we want to get much more intimate. And intimate doesn't mean in a sexual way. It doesn't mean we all have to become friends very in a good. But it really means also about caring about the people, and you don't have to become friends to just care about the people. And that is what is meaning with the intimacy. And the words, that's what I mean. It at the beginning found strange to me, because intim, I think about friends, I think about lovers, but it's really talking about, okay, go to the next level, make sure. And actually the talk that Luca talked about this morning one of the questions went to the same direction. How can we create a situation where we feel that we're one bound and we're proud of what we're doing? And that's we have to spend time to do that and to work from that. And once you do, one way of doing that is that we have to help people to facilitate learning. Um, and because learning, I said before already, one of the other tips where learning can become painful. But one of the things we should help and facilitate learning, so that people feel that it's okay to learn, feel that it's okay to even practice, and sometimes be a little bit foolish. This is a picture from Bart. Bart, who's well, some people might know him as a serial or an entrepreneur in Belgium, doing a lot of interesting things. And this is a picture that was taken by his wife when he was actually going hula hooping with his daughter at an event in Ghent, where he was not afraid to well, he tries something out. They both hadn't done that in a while. I don't think Bart did it even a lot before. Maybe his daughter a little bit, but it was like, okay, I'm not sure if I want to do it on the street. And he said, okay, let's just go and do it together. And he facilitated the way that they could learn together, which is a nice way. And I think we should, for me, as scrum masters, as coaches, help teams on how to do this from time to time. And when we do that, I talked about learning from the community. And it's what I've noticed, and this is what I liked so much about the tip from Siddhartha, is that you can build a network, and that's really important to do that. And it could be an internal network, and it could be, I don't know, just standing out with the people who smoke and learn and get connected to people. It could be just at the coffee machine. It could be inside your company. It could be outside your company. But make sure that you grow your network, because once you grow your network, you have better ways to achieving things that you try to do, because you know people who can help you or some of your friends, and try to pay it forward to the people in your network. And another thing that really helps with that, that is an important question, is craft the quality interactions. What Johan is saying is that if we want to create a better team, we have to look at the way the interactions are going with the team. And she's saying is that sometimes you have interactions in your team, and you notice that it looks okay, but still that it's a little bit too much sarcasm. There is too much, I would say, lack of quality within the interaction. And what is good there is that is if that when you pay attention and you make the quality of the interactions better, that actually the quality of the teamwork of the results is becoming better as well. So that is something that Joanne is really caring about, and that when what she says is it's helping your team. And when you do this kind of thing, you get feedback. And this is exactly what Emily is talking about. Care about feedback. Now, I took a picture from my son learning to play the guitar, because when you start to play electric guitar, one of the ways you can work with is have feedback. Now, making feedback with an electric guitar is very easy. Yeah, you just have to there's some feedback, but that doesn't mean that it's nice and that it's music. Creating music with that feedback is really really hard, and that's actually the same thing for feedback that we get inside the company. Having feedback, receiving feedback inside the company, caring about feedback inside the company is really, really hard. And making music with the feedback that you get in your company is really hard as well. But you need to first listen to the feedback, care about the feedback, and then you can start working with that. And once you do, it can really help a lot, to create, to become something much nicer. And when we do, and this is an important thing there that goes with that, is that we can actually start mind for conflict. Because sometimes we notice, and this is what I like so much about Daria's tip, is that she talks about you might work with a team and it look on the surface, like I said it before, it looks on the surface quite okay, but still there is not much engagement. Maybe people don't like it. That well, it looks okay, but nothing's coming out of the retros, and so you might, as a scrum master, as an agile coach, or basically anyone on the team, look for where is that conflict that is hiding below the surface, because typically there is some kind of conflict that people not talk about, and actually when you can pinpoint it and find ways to bring it up in a nice way, you can actually get a much better team. And as a result, what you will get is a team that will care much more. And this is coming back to what Adita says. Make sure that you love your customer. This is about really an important part. We want people to care about our customer. I'm working with a company where they say we want to have customer obsessed. And when I look at the companies that I like most, it's really about loving their customer. And once you see that people, when we have the love for our customer, people will become much more proud at everything, and they were actually going to talk about their product and do a lot more. So there is a lot there that we can learn. And that brings me to one of the tips that there is there, is that one of the last tips, that's the word I was looking for, from Naresh. And Naresh says that actually with everything you're doing, know that it's impossible to arrive at your destination. There is not such a thing as the agile Walhalla or whatever. So, and it reminded, when I received that tip, I immediately thought about this picture from my daughter. And this is a picture that we taken on the day that my daughter learns to crawl. And this is on the very first day, and she's not able to actually crawl forward. So she's actually going completely in the wrong direction. And still she was smiling. She was smiling because for her, she was learning about a new world. She was learning new things. She didn't arrive to her destination, but she was still no longer bound to that one place where she was put or where she was. She was still learning, and she loved it. And of course, that didn't take long days. There was a moment that later on that she became frustrated because she wasn't able to do that. But that day I really loved it, because it was interesting to see that she was happy by the learning. She was happy that, okay, this is how I should move my arms and my legs, and this is how I can move things. And she was still learning. She didn't get to the place where she was, but she was learning. And that's a thing that we should always remember, that there is not such an agile Valhalla. We will never reach it, but we'll still be able to go closely into the direction of where we want to go, and that will help us in a lot of things. And um, I wanted to add one thing at the end, because typically when I do this presentation, one of the first questions I get, if this is all nice, but isn't this really common sense? Isn't this really all you said? This is what we should all do. Isn't agile all just common sense? And my standard reply these days is, yeah, but common sense is not always common practice, like you can see in this picture. And I hope it's a fake picture that was taken. I have no idea if it's fake or if it's real. But if people are this kind of stupid to put on something on electricity in the water, that is, and I've tons of pictures that I could select it from this, because I see a lot of times that people do things that are completely not common sense. but they still do it. And I'm sure that these people, if they think about it, they know this is completely bullshit and they should not do it. And that's why I hope it's a fake picture. But this is what we see a lot, and we see sometimes a lot. For whatever reason, we just adapt a little bit. And I hope that with these tips that I gave you, that a lot of you will think in different kind of ways on how we can move and how we can, stand still a little bit on what we're doing. Standing still, kind of strange to hear from a person who's talking or who's walking all the time while doing his talk. But anyway, so with that, I want to invite all of you with questions. And Jerome, I understood you wanted to help out with the people who had a question. If they want
Yeah,
to ask.
thank you very much. First, Yves, thanks for all those small tips, small but so applicable. Thanks for that. Indeed. Time for questions. There were a couple of questions already in the chat, so maybe if people they want to speak up, we can invite you on stage. You can use the Q&A tab as well to ask your questions. Let us know. Perfect.
Okay, I see. Anita, you didn't want to speak up, but you had a question earlier on how many times per day per week do you do it yourself, asking for permission? That's a really good question. I would say multiple times a day, but definitely not enough. This is something that is really hard, and I think it is really important that we should keep doing that. And thinking for myself, every time, for example, when I go home, this is one of the questions I'm asking myself. Whatever I said to people, did I ask enough for permission, or did I just blurt out something? And it's something that you can do as a coach in the beginning of a conversation, of a coaching contact. Say, okay, do you want me to blurt out stuff, or do you want me to ask permission? But still, I try to ask it as much as possible as well, because it might be that a person is interested in all my feedback, but today has a bad day and maybe is not interested, and that it might be better to save it for the next day. So thank you, Anita. Very important question.
How are things in Germany? There is one question from Fabien, maybe one size.
One size isn't what skilled agile frameworks recommend. Unfortunately, Fabien, yes, that's what a lot of the frameworks recommend. And in a way, this brings back to what Alistair Coburn says, shuhari. When you want to learn something, it might be good to start with one thing, and it could be Scrum, it could be Kanban. I hope it's not safe or less, because that's very big. But you can learn with one thing, and gradually when you learn, you can adapt a little more. So first, try to understand a little more. But when I was talking about it in this context for the slides, is that one size, please don't do this for the whole company. What we've seen over the years, and it's very hard to implement. It's very hard to talk with large companies because they all want to do everything at the same time. But what we've seen over the years, the last 15, 20 years, it's actually working a lot better to start small with one team, start with one thing, experiment a little bit. If it's working, okay, we can grow this team, then maybe split the team and grow and change our adaptations that way. But it takes a lot longer. People prefer to, why don't we just copy that one ID from that interesting music company in Sweden, and let's all do it all at once, and then we think that we're agile in one way. Where even we know that even that, and I don't think I need to mention the name, that we all know what company I'm talking about, but even they don't implement it that way. They just started with Scrum and they just continued implementing it and adapting it, and it's working differently for all teams, differently inside that company as well. So thank you, Fabian. That's a very good question indeed. Other questions?
Maybe another one from Anita. I don't know, if we record a demo and send it to stakeholders, how can we take their feedback into account when planning the next sprint?
That's already good. Yeah, of course, if it starts immediately afterwards, that is really hard. But I know companies that are doing it that way. For example, if you're working in a complete remote situation, where you have thousands of customers, you can still do a demo with a few people, but you won't have feedback from thousands of customers. So when you create a demo in a video and you find ways, for example, with questionnaires, with forms to asking for feedback, if you find other ways to have people interact with you. I know companies that actually build it into their product, where people can inside their product can already give feedback. Do you like this new way of working, or don't you like it? That's what on a lot of websites these days. If it's web-based, it's actually much easier, but that's what happens in a lot of products, because that's a way to collect feedback. You can also collect feedback just by looking at the numbers. How many people are actually using this? Is this taking less time, more time than before? Are people using it more often than before or not? That's also a way to collect feedback, and that works on a much more scalable version. But you're right, Anita, if you immediately want to go to the start the next sprint and want to use that feedback, then it's much easier if you have direct people in the room. But even there, sometimes their feedback, it takes a while before you understand it completely. So it might be not the right moment to use it in the sprint immediately, but maybe in the next sprint. Officially, that's not what we want to do in an agile way, but still is way much faster than if you would get feedback after 6 months, if you release every 6 months or something. So if you release constantly, because that's actually what I see a lot more companies doing these days, is they don't wait for a demo. We try to release on a daily basis, multiple times a day, maybe even, and then collect feedback in different kind of ways. That's what I see companies doing, that they create small little videos about their feature. That's in a way, it's a completely different kind of company. But if you look at what Shein is doing, they create videos of things that they want to sell without having the actual products that they want to sell. And based on the interactions there, they make decisions on what they will build and not build. And that's a completely different way of interacting. So it's not software, it's clothing that they're making, but it's a similar kind of way of how can we get interactions from our customer. A little bit interactions like what's used inside TikTok and stuff like that.
Thank you, Yves. Thank you. Is there still questions?
I'm not sure if I answered the question, the extra question that Anita says, not go to the next sprint. I think that's what I meant. That you just skip a sprint for the feedback, for example, things like that. That was my intention. But immediately go and start the next sprint indeed. Other kind of questions? Because I know I shared lots of tips in a very fast way, because I wanted to share as much tips as possible.
There is a book, Yves, where all your tips are, I guess. Yeah.
That's why I wanted to show the link as well. So if people go for that link, you can actually buy the book much cheaper. I think it's $5 today with that link. Otherwise, it's $20. So that's especially for this conference.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the discount.
So the goal for me is to spread this as much as possible. If you buy it today, you will still see the old cover, because by the end of today, I hope to have a new cover, which includes all the pictures that you just saw in the beginning of this presentation. Other questions? Come on, we still have 30 people here, so I assume there's still people who have some thing or things you disagree or other tips you want to share with people. We still have 5 minutes left. Is there a tip that people disagree with? Is there something that you say, whoa, this is really hard. I'm not even sure I want to do this. Or one you really liked?
No, yep. Yes, thank you, Benoit, for putting the link. So yes, you can click on the link and you get access to the book directly.
And like I said,
Guys,
there's 89 tips in the book. There's I don't know exactly how many. I think about 40 in this presentation. So there's still a lot more that's inside the book.
super. So thank you, Yves. Thanks, everyone. The 30 people who did attend the session. Thank you very much. The conference is not over. We still have 2 sessions coming right now. One about Agile art assessment with Soledad and Shital, and another one about the clash between Agile DevOps and quality assurance from John Biran, starting in 4 minutes in 2 other rooms. So stay with us. And thank you, Yves, again, and talk to you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.